Hi, Jen. Hello, Nick. Welcome to the first ever Rotageek podcast. It's not meant to be called the Rotageek podcast. We just haven't come up with a name yet. So by the time this is published on the website, we will have a name and it will be good. But yes, so good to have you on, Jen. Really looking forward to kind of learning from you and kicking off our first podcast, really. So I know Nick's done some great thinking on the brilliant blog posts that you've written, and that's really what we're going to be diving into. But before we crack on, it'd be great to hear a little bit about you and your role at Lush and what you do.
Lovely. Hello, everyone. My name's Jen. I work for Lush in Birmingham. So it's one of Lush's flagship stores. It's very big. It's at over 2 floors, and we even have a spa there as well. So at the moment, I take care of about 40 or so sales advisors. There's always something to do. It's super busy. So that's just a little bit about what I do day to day.
Fantastic. And Nick, could you give us a little bit of an intro?
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Nick. I'm relatively new to Rotageek, and it's actually where I met Jen, funnily enough. So I was doing a bit of research ahead of moving from my previous job role over to Rotageek, and came across this fantastic article, which was all about how to roster staff, which was great for me because my knowledge was zero. And we stayed in touch, and now we're obviously to get together now, talking about this blog post in a bit more detail, just because it's very very, very key at the moment, and very very relevant to what we do, but also very relevant to retail, reopening again, and hopefully getting to some kind of normality.
Yeah, totally. And I think, Jen, one of the things that grabbed Nick, and when he shared it with me, that I found so cool was that there's not a lot of people who write about scheduling. In fact, no one does, right? On LinkedIn, on blog posts, no one's talking about it. And I think the funny thing is there are so many people kind of in a niche who do it, right? So getting to talk about the challenges and the funny bits about it and what's hard and what's fun and all of that stuff, it's quite unique. So yeah, it was really, really cool to see you writing about it and getting to have you here on the show too. So thank you. So should we jump into some of those questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we will no doubt link to the original blog post, the original article, because that's generally what we're going to be discussing. But yeah, you kind of alluded to it there, Alex. It's it is quite a niche topic. Maybe not so much for us because that's our world, right? We live for staff schedules, as daft as it sounds. That is our core business. So we're very enthusiastic and about it all. But yeah, just expanding on what Alex said before, Jen, quite niche. Obviously, you do it day to day, but what was it that made you originally decide to, want to write something like that?
Well, when I initially started, it's funny that you mentioned that there's not much available really in the way of articles or podcasts, anything really about rostering generally. I thought this could really be helpful for other people that are doing the same thing, and especially the culmination of really working through the pandemic and over the last year. It's been such a huge learning curve for everyone, and I thought it would really be a shame to not share that, even if for my own kind of self-reflection. And I think so often in our own working lives, we create things or we have a project or a task we need to do, and at the end of it, when it's all said and done, we think, wow, how did I get through that? And what was important to me at the time. So it was really important to me to kind of remember that and keep that at the forefront of thinking. So hopefully it'll aid other people when they're writing their rotas as well, be it through a global pandemic, hopefully not again, or not, just in day-to-day life. But I think for me, really, over the last year, I've had the opportunity to work with so many different support teams through Lush and the wider business of Lush. When you work in retail environments in your own stores, you get almost a little bit stuck. I think you can't imagine what the wider Lush business is like, or the wider business is like outside of your shop. So it's really provided me with the opportunity to expand there and meet people that I never would have met. So for that too, really, as well.
Cool. I mean, and that's really interesting, because that's kind of what you've alluded to there, with regards to wanting to help other people out. That's partly the reason for this podcast as well. What I think we're looking to try and do is build a community of, I want to say geeks because it's in our name, but you kind of know what I'm getting to. So that's I think it's really admirable as well to actually put it out there. And I guess it was quite difficult because you never know how these things are going to be taken, but obviously you're very knowledgeable. And in fact, in the article itself, you allude to a lot of things that we tend to try and hammer home, such as the impact a good schedule can have on, well, lots of things, but predominantly the bottom line. Are you able to go into a bit more detail about your experiences with regards to the impact of that and how you measure it, I guess?
Yeah, so whenever we consider the bottom line of the business, we're primarily thinking about and the monetary value that we hope to see as a result of kind of how we're scheduling and how we're rotoring. So that very much is, it comes down as a hard measure essentially, and the hard skills that you need to run your business. Also, more specifically for Lush, it's one of the kind of manager core competencies and capabilities that they look to see generally when you progress. But personally, for my own measure of success, I really wanted to make sure that the rotas I was providing were suitable for the people that we work with, for the people in the teams that we lead. I think I tried wherever possible to consider that everyone has a life outside of work, and that what you rota them in for has a direct impact on what they can do in their spare time. So absolutely, when it comes to the bottom line, it's hard measures and very much business building skills. But personally, I like to bring the soft skills into it as well a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really important. I know you in the article you referred to some pretty incredible numbers. If I can speak them out. So year-to-date productivity was increased by 65% in December alone, and then productivity increased of 16%, and that accounted for an extra £83,000 worth of sales. I mean, that's pretty amazing. And obviously, you can track all that because the systems that you have in place, and you can attribute this to the fact that you've got the right amount of staff on the shop floor with the right skills to meet the customer demand, and that's really impressive. But the stuff that really interests me is what you mentioned there about fairness and about employee engagement. How do you, obviously that's not something that's very tangible. A lot of it is what how you see people and stuff that I suppose that you feel on the shop floor, and you get a feeling for how engaged somebody is or how happy somebody is at work. But it strikes me that is almost like as important as the kind of pounds and pence figures.
Yeah, I'd say definitely your team aren't going to be productive if they're not happy. And I think one of the key takeaways, and I'd encourage everyone to really consider this, is don't manage your rotas in a way that it makes it difficult to lead your teams. So people don't really like to feel as though they're being managed, but they will follow strong leadership. So with that in mind, we manage things like rotas and the budgets and all of those hard measures that we've kind of already covered. But you don't want to manage your people in that way. They have to have their own autonomy. I mean, within Lush, the wider business, but especially within our store, we have a great open feedback culture. So it's important that your teams feel able to talk to you if they're less than satisfied with their rota, or if they've made plans and they want to have that work-life balance. And I think now more so than ever, it's important to consider that post-pandemic, when people have spent so much more time at home. There's been that real shift in where people's kind of priorities have moved to, and the kind of things that they want to do. I think primarily people want to have more time to do the things that they want to do. So having an effective rota and having someone that's understanding and will take your views into consideration, it is a key part of that. That directly leads into the productivity of your team. We talk a lot as well about motivation at work and how can you motivate your team. But I think the question really should be, are the team happy at work? If they're happy at work, they'll be motivated to increase, and that will increase productivity by result.
And yeah, I think it's really interesting, right? It's like allowing people to input and also kind of, change things if they aren't going the way they want them. Would you say then that maintaining the happiness of your employees, does that require like a certain bit of flexibility when you're building the rotas? And how do you protect that, right? How do you start to build up that flexibility and know when you've got a bit of leeway and where you can shuffle things around? How do you get control of that?
Yeah, I think having an open work culture is really important. Making sure that everyone knows that their views and opinions will be heard first and foremost is really important. You also need rotoring software that is flexible and allows you to be flexible. So when you make a change to someone's shift, it can be sent out to them immediately. Or if you have a gap on your rota, you can fill that easily. That's all been made really easily with what Rotageek has provided us with. I mean, before September, it felt as though we were working with quill and paper, to be honest, using endless amounts of spreadsheets and all of that kind of thing to implement things. So I'd say making changes then, it felt like it was more of a chore, but it's because the way we were rotoring, it wasn't as quick as we needed it to be. We didn't see the results from it that we needed to see, and it wasn't as easy to use. So I think that's important. The software you have is really important as well for that.
Yeah, really cool. It's like a little bit of culture and a little bit of tech coming together to make a great work environment, really.
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty amazing. And it sounds like as well, obviously, Jen, you've gone through such a hell of a lot of change in a very short space of time, not necessarily just on the way that you work, but obviously the pandemic, had a massive impact on that. And I suppose you went from at one point experiencing, rotoring on like skeleton staff, where they've got literally, 2 or 3 people, in a store, I suppose just keeping things, ticking over through to, I suppose, complete lockdown at one point where the shops were closed, and then we're now hopefully coming out of the other end and things are reopening again. I mean, what was, in many ways, did you find was it harder or easier to be rotoring like the skeleton staff, compared to now when things are opening up and you've almost got a full complement of staff? Is there any kind of changes there, any major differences, obviously aside from the number of people?
Yeah, I mean, in honesty, that part of things hasn't really changed too much, because however, when we rota, we use the targets primarily as to set how many people we need in store to be able to make those targets, matching that with the productivity markers that we need to see as well. So that doesn't really have too much of an effect, so that there's not too much of a difference there. But where it does come in handy is where we've seen the increase in sales gradually from opening post lockdown and gradually increasing. This is the kind of trend we see from September and October onwards and through the Christmas period, because every week sometimes the monetary value that you need to make in terms of your store targets doubles or increases by half again. So it's getting that kind of flexibility right. So it's more poignant there, I think, than finding a difference between rotoring on minimal staff with a skeleton team to having your full team back. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it definitely does. It definitely does. And I mean, another thing that I'd really like to get your thoughts on is, I think it's clear from the discussions that we've had and the things you've talked about today that you are clearly a big advocate of smart staff scheduling, and you've seen the benefits firsthand. You live that life, and you're clearly, a massive fan. And I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on how is that going to, how do you see that evolving further, in the future? Not necessarily in terms of the world, but more in terms of like the technologies. Are there any other things that you think could be utilized to make that even go like another step further in terms of maximizing that productivity and the efficiencies that you were talking about before?
Yeah, I think we talk about productivity a lot in terms of sales and sales advisors and what their targets are to make, but I think that could also be broken down in a way for managers as well. So how much time are you spending rotoring? Because it's time consuming. If you don't have something that really supports what you're trying to achieve, it takes a very long time. I'm hugely excited about the auto schedule function. I think in the interim period, kind of first thoughts, it's that for smaller stores, it would be absolutely brilliant, fantastic, when there's only, management team and sales advisors to consider. For larger stores, perhaps that would need a little bit of fine tuning where you have different contract types. So for example, spa therapists, spa trainers, spa managers, stock team, delivery team. So there are more niche roles within larger stores. I think there are even digital creatives now as well. There is in our store, definitely in other flagships too. So I think auto scheduling is great, but it would be even better if that could be fine-tuned to the needs of the business for flagship stores. Yeah, delivery and stock teams are particularly niche. So it would rely on the system knowing when the deliveries are arriving, on what days you need to order, because again, it's more admin time spent ordering that could probably be better used elsewhere if time management isn't efficient in those areas. But it's exciting. Auto schedule is the way forward, I feel, definitely for big shops.
No, that's excellent, and obviously that does a lot of what you said there resonates with with a lot of. I know it's not particularly it's not particularly new, but it seems to me that a lot of retail stores or retailers, are a bit reticent maybe to take that next jump, and I almost feel like they're giving full control to something else. Yeah, perhaps when you see, an optimized schedule that that's been spat out within 30 seconds versus spending 2 or 3 hours doing it manually. I think they'll be pleasantly surprised. So yeah, it is an exciting next step, I think. Well, I think from my side, that's the end of my questions.
I've got one more.
Oh,
a surprise one at the end, and I'm just interested to hear a bit more, I guess, about what's changed really. So I don't want to tempt fate, right? But it looks like we're on the other side, okay? And things are starting to open up, vaccinations rolling out. Slowly we're getting back to normal. I'd love to know, like, what are the big things you've noticed have changed, right? In terms of scheduling, just in terms of running a shop, right? What's changed? If you could go back to the pre-state, when everything was crazy, we had no idea what was going on. Would there be anything you'd do differently? And then, I guess, what's the biggest thing you've learned in this crazy journey we've been on over 18 months? So 3 questions. I'm sorry.
Lots of questions. Okay. I think the main change within stores is that we are learning. Well, I feel, this is just my opinion, I feel that we don't need our shops to be as heavily staffed as we thought we needed them to be. I think now customers coming into stores, they're not really the kind of frightened customers that we expected post-COVID. We thought, everyone coming in will feel really nervous and they may not want people to approach them, for example. However, those kind of people shop online anyway. So the people that are coming into store are happy to be spoken to. However, I just don't feel we need as many physical sales advisors on the floor as we think we do. And I think that for boosting productivity measures especially, I think that's one of the key things. The biggest takeaway definitely is make sure that you're leading your people and not managing them with their rotas. You manage your rotas, you lead people. It's still going to be the biggest takeaway for me. And I think also planning. The productivity markers we saw in the productivity increase was immense. I mean, the £83,000 we made extra in December alone is just incredible. But I think that only happened because of the time that I spent planning. So it's no coincidence that really is the greatest increase. There were numerous delivery rotas, stock team rotas, any kind of skeleton rota you can think of was made in preparation for December. So I think that answers all of those questions. I think I've missed one out, maybe.
Yeah, no, I think you got them all. Maybe there was one if you do anything differently, but
if I do anything differently, I think I would like to have felt calmer. I felt quite overwhelmed. It felt like a really big responsibility, and I suppose it is a big responsibility, but I think now I would approach it in a much calmer and carefree manner. So yeah, less stress.
Awesome. Real. Yeah, if only we all could. Yeah, definitely. I can remember some points over the past 18 months where it was just all a bit too much, really. But yeah, fingers crossed we're on the other side. Brilliant. Cool. All right, Jen, well, thank you so much for kind of spending this time with us, really. And also just a thanks from us, I think, for putting some content out in this space, right? Like, as we said, no one's talking about this stuff, right? And our plan is for this kind of series of podcasts and the content we make here is to get people like you and people involved in rostering and scheduling and making things run day to day, right? And asking them about, what really happens. So it really is an honor to have you on for the first ever one. And who knows, maybe we'll have you on again at some point to ask you how things have changed in 18 more months' time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great working with you, and it's been great working with the Rotageek software as well. It's helped no end.
Brilliant. Cool. Nick, anything from you?
No, again, I just echo everything that you said there, Alex. It's good to talk about this kind of niche topic within retail. There's lots of discussions about omni-channel initiatives and e-commerce, but staff scheduling is always overlooked. So the fact that we're talking about it is great. And yeah, no doubt, Jen, I know we've talked about some other topics that you're passionate about, so I've no doubt that we'll be seeing you again soon. It's been superb. Thank you.
Awesome.